I like to use a hand mixer for this recipe, but you can use a stand mixer fitted with a paddle attachment if you want to. In a large bowl, we're going to start by adding the butter. I have 2.5 sticks of butter here, and I'm using salted, but you can certainly use unsalted. Now, in order for this recipe to come out perfect, the butter really needs to be the correct level of softness, and I'll show you how to test for that now. Using your finger, press it into the butter. If you struggle at all, then you know it's still too hard. I let this butter sit out on the counter for about an hour and it's still not right. So I popped a bowl into the microwave for literally just a few seconds, and now you can see my finger easily glides through the butter. Note there's no liquid in the bottom of the bowl, so the butter's not melted, just soft. Next, we're going to measure our sugar. Take the back of a butter knife and level off the cup of sugar. That way you have the perfect amount. Now we're going to use the hand mixer to blend the sugar and the butter together. And you're going to want to gradually increase the speed and power of the mixer as it combines. And you want to make sure that the butter and sugar become very, very light and fluffy. That's the texture you're looking for. Make sure every once in a while you use a rubber spatula to scrape down the sides and the bottom of the bowl. You don't want any pockets of unmixed ingredients in your dough. As you can see, the texture of this, my spatula has an easy time gliding through the mixture. It doesn't fall off the spatula, so it's not too soft. That's the texture that you're looking for. Next, we're going to add eggs. I just have 2 large eggs here, and I always crack them in a separate bowl, not right into the large bowl. That way you can dig out any shells if you need to. Then we're going to mix that until light and fluffy as well. And make sure you scrape the sides and the bottom of the bowl again. The key to making any recipe for baking, you really want to make sure all your ingredients are mixed thoroughly. So it takes a few extra minutes to scrape and remix, but your baked goods will definitely come out better if you do. Next, we're going to add vanilla extract. And we're going to mix again. Next, we're going to start with our dry ingredients. And whether you're scooping flour right out of the bag or out of your own container, the first thing you're going to want to do is go in with a large spoon and fluff up the flour. Flour will gradually settle over time, so you want to make sure that it's perfectly aerated so that you don't throw off the ratios of your recipe if you scoop in packed flour. And the best way to measure out flour is by scooping it into your measuring cup and leveling it off from there. So once your measuring cup is about full, you're going to take the back of a butter knife and fill in any gaps by pushing the flour back and forth, and then you're going to level it off completely. And now you have perfectly measured flour. To the flour, we're going to add the rest of our dry ingredients. So we're going to start with baking powder. And I love these little containers of baking powder because they have a built-in leveler right in the can, which makes it super easy. Next, we're going to add salt. And I like to use a finer grain sea salt and always measure it off to the side. Never measure salt above the bowl. Now we're gonna whisk it together. You wanna whisk for about a good minute and make sure that all of your dry ingredients are thoroughly mixed. Now we're ready to add the dry ingredients into the wet ingredients. I like to start by adding about half of the dry mixture first and then going from there. Otherwise it might be like too hard to mix in all the flour. And right now I have the mixer set on the lowest speed setting, and I'm just gradually incorporating all the flour mixture into the wet mixture. And you just want to take it easy. Take it slow. You don't need to rush this part. You don't need to go on a fast speed. You don't want to risk overworking the dough. These are very soft and tender cookies. So as the dough begins to form like large crumbles, you can stop using the hand mixer and you can start working the dough together with your hands. And you don't want to knead the dough. You just want to kind of bring it together into a large ball. So as you can see, the dough's not sticking to my hands. It's not too wet. It's just a really nice texture. And as I pull it apart here, you can see it just kind of, it holds together very, very well, but it's not overly wet or dry and crumbly. So just gently work it into a ball until it's smooth, and then you'll be ready to go and start rolling it out. So here I have a large cutting board. Underneath that is a piece of paper towel to stop it from moving. I have flour and a rolling pin, obviously, to roll out the cookies. And then I have a smaller offset spatula to lift the cookies out of the dough. It's a handy tool to have. And then nearby I have a baking sheet lined with parchment paper. So that way I can easily transfer the cookies right onto the sheet. And of course, I have cookie cutters. So first things first, we're gonna start by flouring our surface. So be a little generous because you don't want the dough to stick at all to the surface. We're gonna take a portion of the dough. Again, this dough wasn't chilled. I used it right out of the bowl that we just mixed. And I like to flatten it on the surface and then spread more flour, flip the dough, always alternating the surfaces every time you flour. That way, both sides of the dough are always floured consistently. Then we're gonna flour our pin and start rolling. And I like to move the dough, just ensuring that it doesn't stick. And then the key to rolling even dough, I find, is if I go from alternate directions. As you can see, my hands kind of keep moving here. That just helps me keep it very even, and you want to ensure that you keep flouring your rolling pin so it doesn't stick. And then every once in a while, I'll just feel the surface to find any like high points or low points. And right now it feels about good. It feels pretty even. And I'll show you how thick I roll these out. The dough should be about 1/4 of an inch thick. And that produces a really nice thick cookie. Next, I'll use my cookie cutter. I find that I don't need to flour my cookie cutters. I usually can just press it in the dough since there's a thin layer of flour on the dough already, and it comes out perfect. Next, you're gonna lift the cookies very gently out of the dough. It is a little on the softer side, so just be gentle and take your time. Now, once all your cookies are pulled out, you can reball that same dough and use it again. I wouldn't recommend reusing the dough more than 3 times, however, because the dough will start to get dry and very unpleasant. So sorry for the bad quality here. It's late at night, but I just wanted to show you these cookies just came out of the oven. They're very slightly golden brown on the edges, and they held their shape perfectly. They come out great every time. Here they are, decorated with royal icing. You can find that recipe on my blog as well. And this recipe has just always been consistent for me. I love it. It tastes so good. The cookies are soft, but they hold their shape well, and they're so great for decorating. As you can see, I've decorated all kinds of things here, and it's my go-to sugar cookie recipe. I hope you love it just as much as I do.